Today I will be talking about the economic effects the St. Lawrence Seaway has had on the GDP of Wisconsin. The St. Lawrence Seaway is a 2,000 plus mile long lock and dam canal system that allows for ships to travel directly from the Atlantic Ocean into the Great Lakes, which is normally blocked by the Niagara Falls. This, however, has also allowed for invasive species to enter into the Great Lakes through the ballast water of ships. Over 20 plus invasive species were introduced into the Great Lakes, but I will be focusing on two in particular, sea lampreys and round gobies. Fishing is a massive industry in the areas surrounding the Great Lakes. In the 1940s, the stream of fish coming from the lakes seemed almost endless, but the construction of the St. Lawrence Seaway in 1951 set in motion a big problem that would eventually cost hundreds of millions of dollars to fix. The introduction of these two invasive species wreaked havoc on the native populations of lake trout, yellow perch, and more. Sea lampreys are parasitic organisms that attach themselves to other fish to feed off of them. This devastated the lake trout population because they had no natural defenses against them and were one of the few species large enough to be fed on by the sea lampreys. Yellow perch, on the other hand, were too small to be affected by the lamprey, but had another incoming problem, the round goby. The round goby is a generalist feeder that lives mostly on the bottom of the environment. As a result, schools of goby would swarm around to eat all the eggs from a perch's nest. A few years after the invasives were introduced, the populations of the native species were decimated. This negatively affected the GDP because the fishing industry quickly became non-viable in the areas surrounding the Great Lakes. This is due to the supply of fish being quickly diminished and the demands for fish remaining the same. To combat the invasive species, the Wisconsin government spends on average $12 million a year and employs tens of thousands of people. Because of this mass spending, it has caused an increase in the GDP of Wisconsin. The overall GDP remained the same, if not increased, because the populations of native species have been rebounding, while the spending to fight the invasive species has remained the same. In conclusion, the construction of the St. Lawrence Seaway caused an overall increase in the GDP of Wisconsin, despite the major decline of the fishing industry. This is because the increased spending and major employment counterbalanced the decline of the fishing industry.